I'm Anne, co-host of Transparency in Teaching, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
It's time for the High Tech Podcast. You are joined by Josh Schwartz. That's me. I'm one of the hosts. That's why I'm talking. I'm not a random guy. And joined by Will Illingworth, the other host of the High Tech Podcast. Hey, Will.
Hey, what's up? You know, to be a random guy and the co-host, they're not mutually exclusive. You could be both.
I mean, I guess it's true. It's all situational. Like, for instance, if I just walked into someone else's surprise birthday party, I would be the random guy. But when I'm sitting at my computer talking for the High Tech Podcast, I'm not a random guy. I am one of the co-hosts.
Debatable. I think it's still debatable. I'm not sure.
Is it debatable? Like, because I feel like random guy would be if we're talking right now and some dude opens my office door, walks across the back, picks up a sandwich, and then like walks back.
That guy,
that's a random guy,
would specifically be a trespasser, and you should call the cops.
Okay, maybe we're defining random guy differently. My definition of random guy is trespasser. Because if you think about it, in my other example, that's basically what I am.
Yeah, true. True. You just showed up to a party you were not invited to.
I'm a trespasser. Okay, maybe a better example would be, just hypothetically, the High Tech Podcast is outside. Okay? You know? Like, we're doing it outside. You and I are right there. We're talking. Neither of us are random guys. We're the hosts. Okay? But there's a dude on a bench in the background eating a sandwich. That guy is a random guy.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay. Does that hold up?
I can follow. Yeah, he is not trespassing.
Yeah, okay.
He is illegally allowed to be where he is.
Okay.
He's doing his own thing.
But he's random.
But he is present in our space.
It's true. Like, but nobody logged into the High Tech Podcast to go, I want to see Sandwich Guy. Although I guess if that's our category, we could still say we're random guys, because we're still not sure people log in to see us.
Right.
They might just be like, you know, I need a nap. And the High Tech Podcast is a good.
Yeah. Let me just put those voices on and take a nap. So we're here, folks.
Yeah. You did it again.
We're not random guys.
I talked about this in one of our other episodes.
Oh, gosh.
We're here. You did it. We're here.
We are arrived. Here. Hey.
And we have listened here.
We're here.
And that was a good intro for a while. It ran its time. It's done its thing.
Time to retire it.
And we can keep doing the we're here thing, you know? So anyway, I feel like, you know, I will admit, I feel like since this season we stopped asking for animal photos. You know, we're missing like an intro thing that we need to do.
Okay.
You know, we're processing out loud on the episode. We did like a bit. I don't know what that is.
Well, we just had like a whole conversation about like semantics, so maybe that's it. Like there's like just
our
a
bit
dictionary.
is we answer the questions that people obviously care about, which are what defines a random guy. Like that's been the thing they've been questioning.
Here's a word of the week. Word of the week is sommelier. A sommelier is someone who drinks wine and helps you pair it with your meal.
Is that like the word that everybody picks for the word of the week when they like do word of the week? It's like sommelier, you know?
It's fancy. It's
just
French.
Say wine guy. Why does it have to be so fancy? You know?
Because we have the word for it, Josh.
With the word. Or maybe like our bit could be like, you know, fun story from the day, you know, like we could each do like, you know, I feel like, I don't know, High Tech Podcast listeners, if you're listening, we should do a Twitter poll. Let's do a Twitter poll
or a Spotify poll. We should get Dr. Illingworth to give us like little snippets of what he's been as a moonlighting photo booth operator, and we'll just clip those in as like 15-minute sound bites of what moonlighting.
How fun of an intro would that be if your brother? We just let us know if you like this idea. We'll totally do it. The intro is now Will's brother just like randomly taking photos of people as a moonlight, as a moonlight photographer. So
click.
Yeah.
Click.
You know, I don't know. We could figure it out.
Click.
It'd be a good time. Anyway, that's enough of that.
What are we doing, Josh?
What are we doing? We have a topic. We are focused sometimes. Today or tonight or whatever time your life is in at this moment.
Right now, as you listen to us.
Right now, as you listen to us. We are kicking off our Ungrading series. These were fireworks. If those listening right now, I'm doing hand motions.
I recently binged 9 episodes of season 3
of the High Tech Podcast. That's horrible.
Technically, I binge it every week, but
yeah,
no, Parks and Rec. I just binged 9, and like I'll tell you, they use so many mouth sound effects all the time. Ben does. Chris Pratt's character, like I can only remember is Burt Macklin.
You talking about Star-Lord?
Yeah, Star-Lord. Like I'm just, I can't use any of their actual character names. So Ron Swanson, like they use so many sound effects from the mouth. I'm like, I always think like, oh, we're doing this and it's so unprofessional. It's so dumb. And I'm like, you know what? If they can do it on TV, we can do it. I'm in.
Listen, I'll do sound effects all day, every day. Yeah. Anyway, we're kicking off the Ungrading series. See, I'm doing it again. So we are starting a series. We actually have a name for this type of thing now. If you've been following us for this season, we've been a little confused over what happens when we talk about topics for more than one episode. It's a thing on the High Tech Podcast. But we're kicking off a 5-part series on the topic of ungrading. Okay, so this is a concept that honestly we should have looked this up when ungrading first started becoming a thing. I'm gonna say 2 days ago. So
it is a I would say a recent
thing, right? Yeah.
Well, and like with this terminology, right? Like there's probably definitely been schools of thought going back where like and as you'll hear, listener, in the rest of the episode, like it's kind of a non-traditional way. So there's probably folks who just like, oh, I'm going to teach and I'm not going to use grades. But that's not the full scope of ungrading as we understand today. It's just like that's why I think some of these principles have been around.
I think that's a careful clarification too, because there's like just not doing grades. I guess that fits sort of under ungrading, but like ungrading also is kind of like a model to a certain extent. Like there's some components to it that I think follow it. But at the end of the day, ungrading is this concept of, it's pretty self-explanatory, no grades, but there's kind of like a model to how to do no grading. And the concept comes from kind of, I think, the push, I think from different directions, but the big push that I've seen has been like, by setting up a grading system, we're setting up the wrong motivators for students, and we are building a system that's counterproductive sometimes to learning. And I think that comes from a lot of this concept of like that learning isn't just something you like process information, do when you've got it. It's more of a progressive process to learn something. Some people will need more feedback than other people need less feedback, other people need to do more kind of versions of something to get something down, to get an idea down or a concept. And so the whole, I think, system of ungrading is this concept of, what if we took grades away? Not to say that you don't get like a final grade for the course, like a pass fail type of situation, but most of them are like pass fail. And then it's kind of like this concept for an instructor, and I think people do it differently from course to course, of kind of a minimum bar that you hit as a student, kind of like you've got to do these things and you may do it over and over again, and I'm going to keep giving you feedback over and over again. But the process is kind of focused on, I think the easiest way to put it would be kind of assessment for growth instead of assessment for a letter. Like that's kind of, do you feel like that's a good way of putting it?
I do like that. And I kind of parallel it to like our experiences in design and instructional design to say like, it's really just an iterative process. It's like produce something, refresh it, or it's good enough. Produce something, refresh it, or it's good enough. Like go through those cycles with whatever the learning materials are until you get kind of to a minimum standard, but also like a suitable standard. Like I hate saying minimum when referring to ungrading, because I think that the goal, the philosophy of it is that the products you create will always be good. Like it's a very, in my opinion, it's a very optimistic philosophy, but it's like, if I can get the students to buy into this ecosystem of how we're going to do the learning, then if they submit work, they are already steps ahead of where they usually are with doing things late or doing things to the wrong prompt or whatever. And so from that first submission, they get to work on it again and work on it. Like, not every assignment, not every activity works this way, but the goal is to allow for forgiveness with your students. Forgiveness is actually, I'm using that in the context of a universal design for learning principle, right? The idea that when you allow students to try again without penalty, that is this UDL principle of forgiveness. And I think that ungrading leans heavily on that.
Yeah.
I go into rabbit trails and I go quickly down the, like, what could go wrong? What might be the difficulties of ungrading? So I'm gonna try and keep
of all the years we've been doing this podcast, I've known you as purely just the positive thinker.
Just pure joy.
You never find the ways that
pure positivity. That's me.
No, that's just Will's never finding the black hole.
So that's not the goal of this episode. I'll try to be good.
I mean, we can get into some of that, but at the end of the day, I think, like, the way we break down ungrading is like, okay, logistics, right? A lot of courses they're doing ungraded. They're not awarding a grade per assignment. They're not giving points or percentage grades to each of the assignments students submit. They're giving kind of a final pass fail grade. And then their goal is throughout the course, iteratively, to give students feedback on assignments and assessments so that they can resubmit those and eventually progressively get to, an SLO or to the achievement that they're looking for. Now, the way that plays out, again, Will and I think we'll state a couple times during this series, we're doing this because we think the topic's interesting. We have some experience in seeing it done. But Will and I have not actually either of us actually done a full ungraded course. I've not had the opportunity because I've been told I had to do a certain thing. And Will hasn't done it either. We've interacted with faculty members and helped them set stuff up for ungrading courses. So we have concepts of what it is. We've taken courses that I would consider ungraded courses, I think. So we have some of that experience, and we've been looking into this. So we have it. But my preface to all of that is Will and I are not the experts in ungrading. Now, we have some friends that are better experts in ungrading that will be joining us for this series. Dr. Justin Harbin, who is already been on the podcast and has alluded to him loving ungrading. All you have to do is start to say and Justin will go off on an ungrading tangent.
He'll finish your sentence.
Yes, grading. Justin loves ungrading. And Justin will be a proponent. He's coming on for this series. He'll talk about kind of the why. And I think he talks a lot about how the whole letter grade system actually is counterproductive to learning. And actually kind of builds students up on this achievement system that's not actually positive for them. That would be something Justin would argue.
Which I would also, connection point, bring us back to episodes 87, 88 very recently, about motivation. We believe in motivation and motivation theories for learning. And so that's one of the reasons while we haven't done ungrading, I can really feel for it. I think I could support it. I'd be glad to do a course design on this. I'm not against it anyways. I know there's limitations and affordances to every method. But this is a big one built on motivation theory. It's trying to say what does and doesn't motivate the learner. Yeah. Okay, if grades are an issue or cause issues in motivating the learner, let us find a different way to motivate them.
Yeah.
So
for context, me too, you and I didn't talk about this, but I would have been somebody a year or two ago who laughed every time I heard the term ungrading. Mainly because I also, like you, am a little skeptical of okay, that's a nice dreamland that we live in. But I've come more and more over to it, mainly because I do agree with those who would say, really, letter grades have caused a wrong motivation in education. And I know some of the harder line people who would be ungrading those newfangled teachers. Back in my day, I got I don't know, I just think of a disgruntled grandfather.
Right. I got my C- walking up the hill both ways in the snow.
But the motivation shouldn't be just getting an A. It's
right.
We're setting the wrong standards for students, and I do agree with that. by setting the letter grades, we're setting to them that an A equals like, oh, this is that's what I'm aiming for is an A. No, at the end of the day, I'm aiming for you to learn more. I'm aiming for you to grow more. And I don't think letter grades communicate that well. And I think that's the motivation behind ungrading, is really at the end of the day, capturing this growth mindset idea and building a system that can do that. Right. So that's, I think, a lot of the motivation behind it. So I'm excited to hear Justin talk about it. And then we'll also actually have a new person who hasn't joined us in a little bit. We're doing like a whole intro for the series, but I want to give like a little bit of a preview. Dr. Tim Shea, who I actually work with, has actually done several ungraded courses, and he's going to come in and talk about how to do the assessment side of it. And what he does for it, because that's the place that I think it can kind of get tricky and difficult, is to try to figure out how to do all that assessment when
we could say all day
letter grades
to get rid of grades, but what does that mean when it comes down to actually teaching the students? Like I think, and I have ideas, we have ideas, but like hearing from Dr. Shea will be awesome because he's done it. He's actually done those courses. And the cool full circle for the podcast is a little bit outside the fourth wall moment, but my wife took a class from Dr. Shea when he was not at Josh's institution. I hate to say probably 10 years ago now. I hate saying that. It might even be 11 years ago. And it was the first contract course she had ever taken. I was aware of contract courses at the time because he had done some of them at my institution, our institution. But really cool that, like, you know, all this time later, I never got to work with Tim, but Josh has, and he's now working at his institution. But my wife took a class from him that was an introduction to contract courses, where you say, you know, you actually, like, at the beginning of the course say, I'm going to contract to get a B in this course, and here's the things I'm going to do it. And the quality of what work I'm going to do. And I think somebody who, like Tim, somebody who started with contract courses 10, 11, maybe longer years ago, it makes sense to eventually have grown to like just full on ungrading. Like, why wouldn't you pivot into something that's even more student centric, more student motivation centric than the traditional GPA system? So,
So our hope for this whole series is that while we're entering it today, is that this series can help you if you want to try to do ungrading, understand why to do it and how to do it. I will say the area Will and I are going to focus on by ourselves about partway through the series is how to do it in an LMS. Learning management systems are not set up well for ungrading. And people will often just bail on the LMS, but I actually know that there's ways to set up your learning management system, whether it's Canvas, Google Classroom, Schoology, whatever other ones are out there, Blackboard. They all have ways that you can kind of build the system to enhance what you're doing with ungrading. So we're going to talk about that in the series too. But anyway, so that's a bit of a preview. But I think, the what ungrading is at the end of the day is, okay, self-explanatory. You're taking away grades, at least kind of summative grade pieces throughout the course, and you're refocusing on assessments that they submit, and they get feedback, and they resubmit, and you provide more feedback. With where I was kind of setting the minimum bar line is, I think different instructors do this differently, but I think a lot of them, based on what I've been reading and I've seen in courses, are trying to then also kind of set a minimum bar, right? You're still trying to get them to certain SLOs. So the goal is that they're resubmitting, and then an instructor is trying to basically say, is this acceptable for what I'm looking for from you as a student? And if it's not,
student writes something completely off topic, or doesn't just writes one page when you say 5 pages or 10 pages, it's like, well, this is just not acceptable. Start over.
The key to that, though, is if it's not acceptable, the whole point of ungrading is they don't get an F and lose the chance to be successful at that. Ungrading would say, no, you give them lots of feedback, and then they resubmit that. And you keep doing that kind of iterative approach to grow in it. Now, the part I'm curious for Tim to break down as we get later in the thing that I haven't gotten farther into is, what does that look like week to week? As like, you're also trying to keep up with the amount of assessments.
How long are you working on one assignment?
How long are you working on one assignment? So I think looking at people who talk about the positives and negatives of ungrading, one of the things that a lot of people will talk about, the negatives that's hard to figure out, is like where that cutoff is and how long you have students working on things, and when do you find something acceptable. I think people use that differently. Some have kind of a bar of what they're looking for in the assignment. Some are saying, I want to see this kind of growth out of you. and if I see you're taking that feedback. I will say building an ungrading course is not as easy as going, okay, I'm going to take my course that I used to give grades for and just not give grades for any of those assignments anymore.
Right, right.
You have to reconceptualize the entire course, because you're going to have to
think
about how things become iterative and build on top of each other towards the final goals in the course. It's not as easy as just saying, now I don't give grades, have fun. Like that's not, it is more complicated than that.
Which has a very practical implication. Like, all of your assignment instructions are probably useless.
Yeah.
Maybe the prompt, write a paper on blah, right? But like, do it by this date, have this many pages for an A, this many pages for a B, or like whatever. Like, even your rubrics, like so much of your assessment instructions may no longer be relevant because you have to change it to make it fit into the ungrading model. If you're going to let them resubmit, then why is the deadline, if they don't hit the deadline, they lose 20 points. Like that line gets cut now. We don't need that line. They're not going to lose 20 points. They're just going to need to resubmit.
Yeah.
Rubrics
become a whole different animal, a different thing. Like, I know from talking
rubrics
to Justin,
can still be used, but
but they get used differently. I know from talking to friends who have done it, like, it takes there's a lot of work into reconceptualizing the course. Yep. But I think at this level, for what we want you to understand before we get too far into the series, is at the base level, ungrading is the idea of removing that grade, reconceptualizing your course to be more of an iterative submission growth mindset idea. It's involving a lot more feedback, a lot more interaction between the students and the instructor, and giving like you said, kind of the grace and forgiveness to a student to say, you know what, you didn't do it to the level I wanted, or that you're missing this and this and this, but here's all this feedback, here's the date that you can submit. Now, I've seen people do it differently. Like, I've seen people do it where, like, they submit 2 things a week, and by the end of the week they have to resubmit one of those things, and the kind of acceptance criteria is they have to have that one thing at a certain level before they move on to the next thing, type of thing. And so some of this has become like custom learning path stuff. I would actually also put contract courses into the ungrading concept a little bit. I think there's a model,
definitely a Venn diagram.
Yes, it's like, ungrading. Well, grading's over here. It's a bubble by itself. And ungrading, contract courses, and then I don't know. I was trying to think of something funny to come up with, but I'm losing the idea. Tank courses. Okay, so they come over top of each other. Yeah, tank courses fit everywhere, folks.
With a bunch of random students in it.
Yeah, they kind of fit together, because I would say, like, a contract course is ungrading, and some people may get angry at me for saying this. I'm sorry if this is not the official thing to say, but in my mind, contract courses do fit in ungrading a bit, because at the end of the day, you're not actually supposed to be quote unquote grading each of the assignments. You're looking at the assignments as, are they acceptable or not? If they aren't, the student absolutely can resubmit. And by the end of the class, if they've resubmitted all the things they need, have met the acceptance criteria, then they get a final grade.
That's right. You took a bunch of contracted courses too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You've been a student.
I've done a lot of these. I would say I've seen a lot of ways not to do contract courses. But
I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Did you ever contract for a B?
Did I ever contract for a B?
Yeah.
No. What kind of crap would that be? Like,
so you always contracted for the A?
I always contracted for an A. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm
a little offended that you would even think I contracted for a B. I'm not our college roommate. He for sure contracted for like a C. Like,
C's get degrees, baby.
C's get degrees, and but yeah, no. So I've seen kind of ways to do it and not to do it, and I don't think it's traditionally what a lot of people are talking about today with ungrading. Yeah, because there is still some stuff with contract where they're contracting for a grade, they're doing that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of ungrading in a nutshell. We can talk a bit more in the series, but I'm curious, will like top positive that you see from ungrading, and maybe a top hurdle that you see from ungrading. Does that make sense? What I'm looking for? I'm not looking for us to all be positive.
I'm gonna do a parallel positive.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you did.
I can't.
Those listening, we're making shapes right now. This is a dog.
We're doing puppet shows or shadow shows with our hands.
High-tech puppet show.
Oh gosh, there's an offshoot.
Yeah, we'll get into
positives. for positives, I definitely see two things at this, like
Okay.
in parallel, right? By designing the course to be student centric and to be focused on a functional deliverable. Again, if you say 10-page paper and the student does 1 page, that is not successful. It is not functional. So if you say 10-page paper and they complete 10 pages, they have done something. It may not be good enough. It may need whatever, but like that has a twofold effect. And this is what I think is the positive. One, the student who did the 10-page paper, who enjoyed it, who pulled every ounce of value out of it, passes. You just pass them. It's successful. You give them the feedback to say, this is what you've done well. You know what I mean? You don't have to tear apart every 10 pages of it and be like, dang, you watch this, do that. You missed your thesis. You didn't connect this paragraph. You need a transition statement here. What, like if you've got those students who are just jiving, your grading, or excuse me, your assessment experience for those students is easy. It's even encouraging. Like, wow, well done. You did this well. You can do the typographical stuff like, oh, you used the wrong there in this sentence. Oh, I'm not like, that doesn't matter, right? An editor in a research article or in a book, right? An editor needs to catch those things. That's not the end of the world for a student in college. But the student who is struggling, if they get the 10-page paper done, they can still be successful and still pass, even if they have some of the typos, a few bad transition statements, whatever, so long as they have met the thesis, driven out the research, made sure not to plagiarize. Like if they're hitting those kinds of things and they get the 10-page paper done, they could not be a traditional academic and finally feel successful as a learner. Like to me, that's a twofold thing. It's the same value for the wrong language. Don't want to reinforce the wrong thinking here, right? For the academically minded student who just crushes the prompt and it does everything correctly, checks all the boxes, and the non-academically minded student can do the same paper and both pass. That to me is the value of ungrading. The non-academic student might get more feedback. They might have to resubmit it more times, but they're still going to get through the course. That to me is like so cool because I'll speak truthfully. I have seen students pass courses, traditional courses, that never should have passed. And they only pass because somebody complains, somebody speaks up, somebody is upset that they've taken the course 3 or 4 times, and a registrar gets pushed and a teacher gets pushed, and all of a sudden the bureaucratic stuff gets involved, and that F becomes a C minus, almost D plus, and they pass. I'm like, that student was still not served. We changed the grade so they could move on. They didn't actually get to write the assignment. They didn't actually get to learn something. And that is like a huge failure of the traditional system that, I mean, I hope you're not seeing it as much, but I've seen a lot of it, and it's really upsetting. So in an ungrading model, that shouldn't happen because the student would just be working on it and working on it and working on it until they've passed.
Yeah, I think the value that ungrading gives in the push, they would say, is that what we've really done with letter grades is we've created a artificial system to evaluate good and bad stuff.
Yes.
That's not actually necessarily evaluating learning. And so it's become counterproductive because our students and our systems are looking for that to be the thing that they get, whether it's that B or that A or whatever that may be. They're not actually looking to see whether or not they've grown. Right. And whether or not they've learned.
And that's super frustrating.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of value in what ungraded. That's what's convinced me on the other side that there's value to be had here. I will say, just to start, I'll bring it back up over the series a bunch of times. While I love the idea of ungrading, there is still the hurdle ungrading has to get around, which is that we live in a not perfect world. And not every student wants to learn. And not every student is motivated to learn. So how does that work when we do? Now, some would just say, you know what? They don't pass the course because they don't engage in the process. But that can sometimes be difficult for students. I also think the other hurdle you can get across is how there's still that murkiness of how much do you let them redo things? How much do they keep doing stuff over and over again before they get buried under the work that they have because they're just not getting it, right? So like, and there's a lot of different components to that. I will say I still believe I love ungrading as a concept. I'm excited to talk about it for the next 5 weeks. I still think there is the underlying hurdle of that we don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah.
So because of that, there's a reason we've created a lot of artificial systems in our world to evaluate things, because sometimes students want to know what the bar is. I've seen students struggle in ungrading because they're like, did I do good on this? I see all your feedback, but like, what level was this? Where did I hit in the system of levels? You know,
to speak to your experience, right, Josh? Like you said this even on the pod before, high school was not great. College, it clicked for you, right? Like if you did great in undergrad and then even better in your master's, right? Like that was something for you that, like, I don't know what happened in that moment. Why were grades different in high school versus college? You cared more about the material, absolutely.
I was learning. I was doing more stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like there was something that was significantly different for you about a grade in college from high school?
Not really. I think I wanted to do better. I viewed it. I had a different idea of success back then. In high school, I just didn't
motivation changed.
Motivation changed. It wasn't the system changed. My motivations changed at what I wanted to do in life. And I still think both systems have that problem. That's not me to say that like ungrading is not something we should be. Obviously, we're looking at it because Will and I both think it's a helpful concept, a helpful idea. Honestly, I'd love to see more of it happening. And I think there's a solid argument that ungrading has, which is we've created an artificial system for evaluating learning that's actually been counterproductive. It's motivated students to achieve that artificial grade than to actually learn. They care more about getting the A than they do about actually learning the concepts and getting to the SLOs that they do. Right now, in theory,
so me, that was me.
And in theory, like those two things should go hand in hand, but because they're artificial systems, we've struggled as human beings to connect the letter grade to actual learning. Because here's the deal, and this is the thing ungrading would say: learning is a growth system. It's not a you achieved it, you arrived, you're here, welcome.
Right.
You didn't. No, it's a something that's a growth system, and that's why I think ungrading has some value in there. So.
Well, and that's where when I speak to my college, undergrad and grad experiences, like I almost saw it as a game. It wasn't a fun game, but I saw it as a game. Like if I beat these levels, I win the game, you know? And so it was like, I looked at every syllabus like a project, like a challenge. Like, all right, if I do this thing and meet these dates and do that thing and get this many pages, I get the A. And it wasn't like, oh, second language acquisition. I want to learn about how the mind works so someone can learn a second language. It was, how do I get through this course to get an A? Now, I'm pretty altruistic. I did enjoy second language acquisition. Mrs. Menga, if you ever listen to this, I did love your course. Thank you very much. But you know what I mean? Like that was more of my approach to college in general. And I've been a much better learner after college when there's not a grade involved than I was at that time, because I was so grade oriented. Like it wasn't my thing. One of the other points though that I'd like to make on this is that one of the things that a lot of folks, especially faculty, I've heard say on the point of grades and why they'll use them, why they motivate them, deadlines and stuff like that, is like, this is the real world. Like we're preparing you for the real world. I don't know about you, Josh, but I don't get A's and B's at my job.
I would beg to differ that we are preparing people for the real world. In fact, I think we're letting them down, because you don't get grades in the real world. People are traditionally bad at giving other employees feedback. That doesn't happen very often.
Yes.
We don't get grades in work. You just get paid. And quite frankly, if it was people got A's and B's, I think some people are getting paid more than they should be.
And some people would not have jobs anymore.
Yes. That's not a valid argument anymore. That's that you're not preparing them for the real world. Now, I would argue where some of the motivations that some people are saying there is like deadlines a little bit different. In life, you do have to get work done by certain times. You do have to.
I was about to say, though, I can't remember the last time I had a work deadline that didn't move. Like my work deadlines move all the time. Maybe that's endemic to where I work, but
yeah, I think that's a different problem.
It's not me.
Like,
it's
that's no, that's true. I mean, deadlines move and stuff, but in class, deadlines move too. But like at the end of the day, that's also the type of thing we're doing. Like if you're releasing a course by a certain day, yes, there's a chance it could get moved. But I've also been in situations where it's like that course has to release that day. It doesn't matter what it
happens.
looks like.
Right.
It's going out. Like that's the
send
the
it.
thing.
It hasn't been painted yet. Send it.
It's send it. Okay, like that's there. That is a reality. Anyway, that's I think an argument that at the end of the day, you know what, I would argue education's not all about preparing them for the real world either. It's about them learning.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Like, I've heard folks take that tack. I'm like, oh man. Well,
some of the people listening right now that work for me are going, well, hold on, Josh doesn't seem to change deadlines. Because I'm an obnoxiously anal person about deadlines. Like I'm not saying I set all of my personal task deadlines to the day before they're actually due.
But you do.
But I do.
His bill is due on the 30th. He pays it on the 29th.
Like, well, not that. Let's not talk about bills. No, that's different. That's
They're
a different part of life. Yeah. No, those are exceptions. Anyway, I'm excited to talk more about ungrading. Next episode we'll have Justin on. He will be talking about why to do ungrading. And I'm sure that'll be a great time. Every time Justin joins us on the podcast, we go everywhere from tech.
My cheeks always hurt. I'm always
German
laughing.
Philosophers. I don't know. I'm excited to see what journey he takes us on. But before we bring in Justin, I'd like to frame our situation. You know, I'd like to you know.
I was just looking at the show notes, like, oh yeah, it's time to, and then he did it. I was like, oh.
I'd like to bring us back into frame to talk about apps. Right now, you're going, what does bring us back into frame mean? Don't think about it too deeply. Just follow the journey, okay? Follow the High Tech Podcast journey. Our app for today is frame.io because, you know, it wouldn't be a cool new app if we didn't put .io after it. You know, if
that wasn't the web domain.
Yeah, that's like the new thing now is .io. I'm going to leave it there because I literally, beyond that it's called frame.io and I have a general understanding of the features, this is not my day. This is the Illingworth way.
Now that Josh has successfully created a frame for us, allow me to paint you a picture.
Nailed it.
Frame is a collaborative video editing, strike that, reverse it, collaborative video commenting and critiquing tool.
Yeah, if we were doing this in frame.io, I would have commented on the thread there and said that's actually not true.
Not true. We need to have the talent redo this one.
Yeah, cut this. Deadline's not moving. Due tomorrow.
That's a Josh deadline for you. Due tomorrow. What does it do? I mean, you know, so I said the big fancy thing. What does it do? You plug a video into the platform. You send a link out to people your stakeholders, whoever needs to see the video, whoever's helping you work on the video. And then frame by frame, they can pause and annotate the video with comments, questions, feedback, right? So your students are doing a video project for your course. You have them throw everything in Frame.io and send it over to you. You get these videos up in your inbox and you do all the commenting like, hey, your intro was rough here. This slide needs to change to that. Maybe try some effects at like 33 seconds, right? Like you can put all of that information, all that feedback directly onto the video inside the Frame platform. Only person that needs to have an account is the person with the video. So you can, like, I could send this video to Josh. He doesn't have to have an account. He can just log in. It asks him his name. He puts in a first name or an identifier so that when the comments are put down, it says, Josh, 33 seconds, Will said something stupid, right? So then, okay, so we go back in, we cut that Will said something stupid part, and we move along, right? So then it also has versioning control. So I get all this feedback from whoever's doing my proofing, and I upload a new video into the platform, new version of it without that. And so then folks can see the new version and keep working on the video until you got it to exactly what you want to be. Here's I mean, I think that's fantastic. And we kind of wanted to launch this with Ungrading because it is a collaborative commentary, annotation platform for video material. That's very difficult to do. Google Docs, Microsoft Word Online, like we just assume like, oh yeah, a paper, throw it in there. I can mark it up. I can put comments. Like that's now kind of passe for the Internet of Things. But this with videos is like, holy crap, we really haven't been able to do this until software like Frame. If you want to do anything, you'd have to like literally like, all right, watch it on one screen, type notes, like, all right, at 3 minutes, you're typing at 3 minutes and 33 seconds. Okay. You said something stupid, cut that and add something back in at 3 minutes and 32 seconds, right? Instead of having to literally type all of that, you watch it, hit pause. That was stupid, period. Change this, period. Send. Done.
Yeah.
The feedback is captured right there.
Maybe think of some more encouraging feedback to leave for your students.
No, it's for Will. As long as it's for Will, you can just say, dude.
Well, this is part of our tanks course, and we obviously don't care about emotions in the tanks course because we were already talking about motivation parts 1 and 2 that apparently were slightly abusive in the way we motivate students. So
just shoot tanks next to them so that they don't have their hearing.
I would still argue I said next to them, okay, not like shoot them. Okay,
I know. Like, but still,
I'm just saying,
tanks are really loud.
I'm just saying, if you don't know what we're talking about, you can go check out our 2 motivation part 1 and 2. Yep. And we talked about that briefly there, so you can get the inside joke we're talking about right now. But anyway, it's a cool tool. I mean, there's a handful of tools out there doing video commenting now in timelines. We'll mention them, but I think what I want to highlight what Will said here for a second. We're trying throughout this Ungrading series, I think, to highlight some apps that are more kind of interaction focused and feedback focused. Because in an Ungrading course, you're going to need a lot of ways to give good, substantial feedback. And we want tools that don't get in the way of that or make it harder. And so Frame.io, if you're doing a course where you have to do video submissions for students, like whatever that may be, maybe you're in a video editing course where they're using Adobe and they have to do this editing, you can use Frame.io to give feedback at sections of it so they can continually improve and iterate their videos. If you're in a counseling course situation where they have to video mock sessions, you can use this to make comments at certain parts of the session to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't tell them that everyone hates them. Like so stuff like that.
That again would have been Will. Will would have been that counselor going, I think people hate you. It was like, strike that.
Whoa. Yeah, no, you don't tell them that. You just think it. So this is why
Josh is not a counselor.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I'm not in this situation. Anyway, Frame.io, super cool. Go check it out. It's literally Frame.io online. They have a free account that has a handful of limitations because it's Adobe. It wouldn't be Adobe if it didn't have limitations.
So it's recently been purchased by Adobe. If you have the Creative Cloud, this is now available to you. So if you're in an institution with the Creative Cloud, huzzah. If you're not, the free version is pretty limited, but you can get the job done. I've used it a few times with free, and it still does the trick. It's very useful for your videos.
Yeah, I would say the positive of being by Adobe now and being in the Creative Cloud is most of you listening to this, if you're doing video editing or communications courses, Adobe Cloud is already a part of what you have to do. So this would be a great tool to integrate into what you're already doing to provide video feedback because it integrates with Adobe now.
Yeah.
So I busted on Adobe, but props to Adobe. Adobe and I have like a, one of those relationships where, it's like one of those things where like I need you and you sometimes do cool things, but then also sometimes you make it really hard just to click somewhere,
I get that.
It's like an endearing contractor that you need them to build your house and they make awesome rooms, but sometimes they put doors in the wrong place. Like that's
why does this door not open?
Like why are there 7 doors to the entryway? Why? Yeah. Hold on, let me Google this YouTube video that'll explain to me on how to
watch a 15-minute video to understand why the doors are there.
I'll get a LinkedIn credential that lets me go in and get there. Anyway, that's Frame.io. Check it out and start commenting on videos. That's all I got.
We love it. All right, folks, that's this week's episode. Thank you for joining us on the beginning of the Ungrading series. Remember, next episode, episode 92, we will have Dr. Justin Harbin here with us to answer the question, why do we ungrade, right? Why do we start to do this?
Yeah. We haven't talked to him about it yet, so he may come in and just say, don't, you know, and then it cuts
an episode.
It cuts the whole series short.
And we're done. Wrap.
We're done. Wrap it.
Actually, throw that in frame. I'm just going to edit that section. Just make sure you mark it for me. Thank you very much.
We'll use some AI and we'll change it to do it. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Do some chat GPT and some voice synthesizing, and we'll make Justin say whatever we want him to.
Yeah.
Until then, check us out on social. Our handle pretty much everywhere is at High Tech Podcast. You can email us, inbox at hightechpod.us, or our website, hightechpod.us, where you can find every single one of our episode pages that Josh has so wonderfully created. Have you used ChatGPT to write any pages yet? You should try.
I actually did this week. You asked me, and I actually did. I wasn't going to admit it, but I hate writing the first. Like, anybody who's looked at our website, there's a paragraph at the beginning that like tells you what the app is before I get into like the fun stuff, like how to use it. And I got to be honest with you guys, I hate writing that paragraph. It's always annoying to try to think about how I want to do it. So I went into ChatGPT and I said, what is this app? And it gave me like a little sentence thing. Now, I highly adapted it because I didn't like components of how it wrote it, but it was super helpful. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. Oh, see, now I can put the ChatGPT hashtag on this episode and get us more views and impressions from the world. Welcome, world. If you got to this part and you're like, why is this tagged?
ChatGPT is doing this episode.
Amazing. Until next time with Dr. Harbin, thank you again, folks, for joining us for another week of the High Tech Podcast as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness all kinds of technology and pedagogy in the classroom, whether it's online, hybrid, or in person. Until next time, we'll see ya.
See ya.